Hello everyone, welcome to our animated philosophy series, where we explore timeless concepts in a modern context. Today we're diving into Bertrand Russell's theory of descriptions and his idea of incomplete symbols. These concepts might sound abstract at first, but they're powerful tools that help us deal with some pretty deep philosophical problems, especially when it comes to language and meaning. By the end of this lesson, I hope you'll see why Russell's approach was revolutionary for philosophy and why it continues to influence not just philosophy, but science and everyday communication. Let's start with a classic example that Russell used, the sentence, "The present King of France is bald." Now, this might seem like a harmless statement, but if we think about it, there's a big problem. There is no present King of France. The monarchy in France was abolished long ago, so how can we even make sense of this sentence? It seems like we're talking about something that doesn't exist. Before Russell came along, philosophers were stuck with two main options. One option was to say that the sentence is meaningless because it refers to something that doesn't exist. The other option was to say that the sentence is false because there's no King of France to be bald in the first place. But both of these options seem unsatisfactory. We understand what the sentence is trying to say, but it's not clear why that should be meaningless or outright false. This is where Russell's theory of descriptions comes in. What Russell did was break down the sentence logically into its components. According to his theory, sentences that seem to refer to non-existent objects don't actually refer to anything in a direct sense. Instead, they should be understood in terms of logical structure, not as simple subject-predicate sentences. Let's look at the phrase "the present King of France" more closely. It's tempting to think that this phrase points to some object, namely, the King of France, but Russell argued that it doesn't work like that. The phrase doesn't name an object, rather, it expresses a set of conditions. It's like a logical formula. For the sentence "the present King of France is bald" to be meaningful, three things need to be true. 1. There must be someone who is currently the King of France. 2. There can be only one such person. 3. That person must be bald. Now, what Russell points out is that the first condition already fails. There is no present King of France. So, logically, the whole sentence turns out to be false, not meaningless. By breaking the sentence into these components, we can see how it operates logically without assuming that there has to be an actual King of France out there somewhere. This is what Russell called an incomplete symbol, a phrase that looks like it refers to something but actually doesn't refer to anything at all. It's just a convenient way of talking about a set of conditions. The phrase "the present King of France" is incomplete because there's no object in the world that it corresponds to, but that doesn't make the sentence meaningless. It just means that when we break it down logically, we see that it's false, because one of the conditions isn't met. So why does this matter? Why should we care about whether or not we can talk about non-existent things? Well, this theory has far-reaching implications for both philosophy and science. Let's think about fictional characters for a moment. Suppose someone says Sherlock Holmes lives in London. Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character, he doesn't exist, but we still feel like we can talk about him in a meaningful way. Using Russell's theory, we can see that we're not really talking about a person named Sherlock Holmes. Instead, we're talking about a set of descriptions or conditions that are associated with the character in the stories. The same goes for hypothetical scenarios in science. Take the famous thought experiment of Schrödinger's cat. In this scenario, there's a cat that is both alive and dead, depending on whether or not a certain quantum event has occurred. Now, obviously, this situation isn't something we've observed in reality. It's a hypothetical scenario. But we still talk about it in a meaningful way because, like in Russell's theory, we're dealing with a set of conditions. We're not claiming that there actually is a cat in this state. Instead, we're exploring the logical consequences of those conditions. Russell's approach helps clear up a lot of ambiguity in language. In everyday speech, we often say things that seem to refer to non-existent or hypothetical entities, and this can lead to confusion. What Russell showed is that we don't have to assume these things exist to talk about them meaningfully. We just need to analyze the structure of the sentences and recognize that some phrases don't refer to objects, but rather to conditions or descriptions. This has practical importance beyond just philosophical puzzles. In scientific discourse, for example, we regularly use theoretical models or concepts that don't necessarily correspond to real objects in the world. Consider black holes before they were observationally confirmed. Scientists could still talk about them meaningfully, even though they had no direct evidence of their existence at the time. Russell's theory shows how we can discuss these abstract or theoretical entities logically without making unnecessary assumptions about their existence. To sum up, Russell's theory of descriptions allows us to make sense of sentences that seem to refer to non-existent things by breaking them down into their logical components. His concept of incomplete symbols helps us see that phrases like the present King of France don't actually name anything but instead express a set of conditions. This logical clarity has helped philosophy move past some long-standing debates and also has practical applications in both linguistics and science. So next time you hear a sentence like the current Emperor of Mars loves jazz, you don't have to be confused. Just remember that, according to Russell, we're not saying there's an actual Emperor of Mars out there, we're talking about a set of conditions, and in this case those conditions just aren't met. Thanks to Russell, we can understand how even non-existent things can be talked about in a precise, meaningful way. Thank you for learning with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights into similar echoes.